I don't know, something about this genre just really clicks with my temperament. So at the start of this year, I made a personal goal for myself to experience as much horror media as I could in my downtime. And, I haven't uploaded in a while, been busy with college, but despite not uploading for a bit, I have been sticking to that promise to myself. Been playing horror games and watching plenty of horror films, especially in theaters. And these films have brought to the forefront the thrill and creativity this genre has to offer. The kind of thrill and creativity that to me is pretty inspiring as someone who wants to write horror one day. But this video will be simple. I'm going to be talking about some of the movies I watched in theaters and my thoughts on them. Also, there may be spoilers moving forward. As you saw in the intro, I did make a video talking about Iron Lung, the movie and the game. And for this film and the next, I did give extensive thoughts on them in previous videos. But for this video, let's just give my brief thoughts. So with all that in mind, Iron Lung still remains an atmospheric marvel in my memory. Looking back at the two times I watched it in theaters, I genuinely appreciate the whole vibe the film delivered as a slow burn, atmospheric, cosmic horror movie with a lot of really interesting sci-fi elements and very memorable scenes. I also personally liked Markiplier's acting, and I think the world building was just really cool. The film built this whole vibe of like a weird, dreadful, dreamlike sort of vibe. Um, and the movie was a slow burn, which you're gonna see a lot in movies this year in the horror genre. Um, and I like slow burn a lot, and I especially like it when you give time to build the world, the vibe, and the characters. And I feel like this film did that really well. Um, and also the ending was fucking awesome. I absolutely love the way Iron Lung ends and how it all builds up to like that final, I wouldn't even call it the final act, just the final like last 30 minutes of the film is just, I don't know, it's exciting. And now I will mention this. I don't think I mentioned this in the last video, but the monster, the blood eel, is just such a cool monster design. I love an interesting and scary monster, and I thought the blood eel was that. So overall, I thought this was a strong start to this year of horror. For this one, I'm going to keep pretty brief. I made a video a while back called Scream Cup of Horror, and I spent the video talking about my love for Scream 1 and the great franchise it started. At the end of that video, though, I briefly talked about my thoughts on the seventh film since I watched it around the time before making that video. And I was pretty generous with my thoughts on the film because now I kind of feel like personally that it is definitely the weakest film I've watched this year in theaters, and it's also definitely the weakest Scream film. And while that is a rough thing to say for a video like this, I do want to talk about it since it is a horror movie I've watched in theaters this year. And it had some elements I do want to note. So first off, I think the best part of the film is Sydney's character development as a mother and her story with her daughter. I thought that aspect was really neat. And honestly, I wish we got more of that in the movie. I feel like that dynamic definitely needed better writing. And also, the movie was missing some sort of meta commentary, which Scream is very known for as a franchise, I wouldn't say making fun of tropes in other horror movies, but like being self aware, which I really like. This movie didn't feel self aware, and I think that definitely made it weak in a lot of aspects. Um, and also, the ending, if you've seen online, if you've watched it yourself, you know that ending is not satisfying at all. But I do think there was a lot of cool scenes that Ghostface was in, especially that opening scene. But the film gets gradually weaker as it continues, and like I said, big reveal at the end was pretty disappointing. But despite this, I do think it's noteworthy for this video, since you have a lot of banger horror movies this year, and while I think this is by far the weakest, I am glad I got to see it in theaters, and I did enjoy it. So yeah, funnily enough, I was gonna make a video a while back talking about Undertone, but I didn't really have much to say for a full video. Uh, Randomly it was just a random day, me and my friends decided to watch a horror movie, and Undertone seemed neat. Trailers showed that it was gonna be like this creepy movie with huge emphasis on sound design. I mean, it was marketed as the scariest movie you'll ever hear. Well, so it's like, okay, sure, let's see what you got, Undertone, you know? So, overall, the movie was, I think, solid. Far more surprisingly good than I thought it would be. Um, I went in with pretty low expectations, and I really liked the movie is simple, and many may say it's generic, but I think there's two big things that make this movie stand out for me personally, especially since I'm going off memory here, because I watched it a while back. The big two things were Evie and Justin. Specifically, Evie is a pretty solid character. All of the story revolves around her basically isolated in her home. Um, there's a big theme of motherhood, and it is really creepy. All the build-up surrounding her and the scary moments in this movie. Um, Justin is the guy that she has this podcast with, and this podcast, uh, one of the big things I really like is, and this is the big thing, is that there are moments in this movie where they just have long strings of dialogue, and the dialogue is decent, but I think it's the combination of just decent dialogue and the acting that makes it feel genuine and feels natural. So it gives this movie a different kind of vibe than most other horror movies. But that's just me personally. I did really like the dialogue, and I think how the two investigated the scary stuff through the podcast was cool. I'm not going to get into huge spoilers about the plot, but I really did like that aspect of the movie a lot. And I think it's highlighted really well in the ending, but the ending I think could have been stronger, but I still really liked it. And all the scary elements in the movie I thought were inconsistent, honestly. Some moments were really creepy and some were like, okay. But it's cool. The sound design was awesome though. Like I said, I think the film really the theater experience for the film really highlights those elements. So overall, I think Undertone is a solid horror movie. I did really enjoy the theater experience, and me and my friends had a great time watching it. So yeah, I mean, this was another strong horror movie this year. These last two horror movies I'm going to be talking about are definitely the highlights of the year so far. But between the two, the first I watched and the first I'll be talking about is Backrooms. Going into this film, I only knew that was made by the guy that created the original Backrooms found footage video on YouTube. So the big question I had going into this movie was, how do you approach a Backrooms movie? The Backrooms as a concept feels like it has so many variations in pop culture as a result of it becoming a popular piece of internet horror. So I was curious how the movie would take its unique approach to it, and I was greatly surprised. The movie, throughout it, had such a sense of sheer dread, wonder, and paranoia, and a lot of claustrophobia, disorientation, like a very interesting vibe throughout the whole film. And seeing characters like Clark slowly lose himself in the back rooms and also inadvertently getting everyone else involved, it was so interesting. The plot was very interesting. The elements of the back room were interesting. So this is one of those slow burn type of horror movies as well. But from the very beginning of the film, with that opening scene, you know what you're getting into. That whole opening scene, it gives you a sense of paranoia, panic, disorientation. It was extremely well done. The found footage elements I also thought were definitely the strongest aspect of the film, and were the parts of the film that I was most invested in what the backrooms was, and like, just, it was so eerie, so eerie. I also really liked the ending sequence, despite a lot of people saying it's the weakest part of the film. I like that whole sequence with Clark and Mary. And once again, those characters I felt added a whole lot to the scope of the Backrooms. And the set design, like I said, the story revolving these two characters, Clark and Mary, I thought was super enthralling. And the ambiguity behind the Backrooms also intrigued me. And I liked that the movie, at least for me personally, it made me think. It made me theorize. Like, what is the Backrooms? Because the movie kind of leaves you with, like, this sense of, like, wonder. Like, what is this place? After everything you've seen, all the horrifying things you've seen throughout the film, and how it's affecting people's, like, I don't even know, like, it making Clark go crazy, things like that. It just made me think, like, what is the Backrooms? I have a lot of theories of my own, but I'm glad that it's not 100% clear as to what it is, and I think it leaves the audience with a lot of really cool questions they can, like, think about. This will be theorized a lot moving forward. I'm sure of it. So, I don't know, overall this film was both creative and very fascinating, and I'm genuinely pleased with it. And I think it was a very incredible, unique, and well-made horror movie. So the last movie we're going to be talking about in this video is Obsession. And I watched Obsession a little over a week ago, and from the trailers alone, I just knew. I just knew this was going to be an amazing movie. The the vibes were there, and I am so glad my expectations were still exceeded. Holy shit. This movie deserves all the praise it's getting because it's phenomenal. Um, this movie has created in me some of the greatest sense of anxiety, and I have not had a horror movie give me this much anxiety before than when I watched Obsession in theaters. Me and my friend, the whole time, were covering our faces. We were like in sheer either, we were like paranoid, anxious, creeped out, uncomfortable. It was incredible. Um, the cast, the characters in this movie are all so interesting as well. So well acted, so well written. You have Bear, Ian, Sarah, and Nikki, of course. All I'm gonna say is this movie is also so fucked up in how it explores some of its themes, like sincerity, the lack of sincerity in romance, and control over love. Like, it's really messed up. Um, and also Bear, oh god, I didn't want to get into spoilers, but let's just say Bear and Nikki are incredible characters, and they're like the main focus of the movie. And just, I don't even want to get into spoilers because I think everyone should just go and watch this movie. But I will say, um, there are some scenes in this movie that were so shocking in the best ways possible. And there was a scene, and this scene is the only time in any movie I've ever watched. Like, I've never had a movie give me a physical injury, but there was a scene that me and my friend were like super nervous because we knew something bad was going to happen, so we were covering our faces. And then when the bad thing happened, my hand, because I was covering my face, jolted into my eye, and it ended up like poking my own eye, and it was incredible. I couldn't have been happier to have poked my own eye from a movie because that scene was incredible. Like I said, the whole time we were just extremely squeamish, anxious, and uncomfortable. And the whole plot of seeing just Bear and also just Nikki going through hell, uh, some of the creepiest and most anxiety inducing scenes were the catalyst of Nikki and her actress. Oh my gosh, her actress did such a phenomenal job playing Nikki. Um, just wow. Just wow. I could only continue just exclaiming how incredible this movie is, and it deserves all the praise it's getting. It will be a movie that I no doubt remember for a very long time, and I'm just so glad I got to see it. And yeah, if you haven't watched Obsession, go watch it. Incredible movies this year so far, and this is definitely in my opinion deserving of all its praise. So yeah, I mean, I don't really have much to mention in this outro here, but I do want to say I'm really glad to see a lot of these movies talked about in this video are, movies made by passionate individuals. Like, it is so refreshing to see, and it's inspiring to see as well, that these movies are doing so well and they're made by such passionate and talented people. So yeah, that's inspiring. It's great to see. As someone consuming a lot of horror media this year, through movies and video games, catching up in the genre, it's just these movies I think are incredible, and I'm happy to see that the genre this year is going strong. So yeah, that's really about it. Hope you all enjoyed this video. So yeah, take care.